Back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain, co-host, here with Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
Well, Coach, it's that time of year. It's deer season. It's football season. There's a lot of seasons going on right now, so it's been fantastic. Now, if it just wasn't 90 degrees outside, it would be good deer season. But
a little warm for deer season, yeah.
It is what it is. Yeah,
we haven't been 90, but we've been in mid 80s at times. But I guess we're warming back up, so I guess it's headed this way.
Yeah, it sucks. We got a cold front coming though.
So we've had 1 or 2 days where it was cold enough to use the wood stove, and that's what's upsetting me the most because
because you can't use the wood stove.
Can't use the wood stove. It could be 80. I mean, but if it's 70 during the day, like even if it's cooler at night, the house isn't gonna. We have a modern house. It's not going to suddenly become frigid,
right?
And you can't justify. I mean, but problem. A wood stove. If you have a fireplace, all the heat goes up, and you can just be like, "Oh, pretty fire."
It's pretty.
If you have a wood stove, it's going to be 85 in your living room if it started at 70
very quickly.
So, yeah, so I don't get to use that, but it is pretty when we get. I got to use it a couple nights, but now didn't get to stick with it for long. It'll be here soon enough, so I'm not in too big of a rush.
So I got to ask, what's it like having a college football team that you root for that's like successful this year?
Okay, you guys are rough, huh? Well, you got to understand that number one, and you understand this because you've been there before, 1 loss is not good enough. So we're not happy either. It's just a different kind of not happy.
Yeah.
Nobody's happy. Oregon's the only ones that are happy right now. And again, this is, as of this recording, Oregon is the only ones that are happy other than a couple of random schools that are going to lose a game eventually.
Yeah.
So like Georgia finally started to show some, what we expect type of things.
Knocking off Texas was big.
That was huge. That was huge. Yeah.
Really good.
But again, like you've been in this situation before with Oklahoma. Nothing is good enough.
No, absolutely.
Like, oh, you beat Texas. It's like, yeah, but that first half at Alabama, like that's all we think about. So, yeah.
It's going to be a wild year.
Welcome to the SEC, though.
This is
every week.
Like we've had some games with our high school team that's similar to like what I'm watching OU do every freaking week. Where it's just like nothing's clicking on offense.
Mm-hmm.
You're a team that can put up. We had 513 yards last Friday, and we've had games where we had like 45 yards. On offense. You know what I mean? And so it sucks to see my college team, who I shouldn't be able to watch it and be going like, oh yeah, here's how I would improve that, because they're supposed to be so smart. They're so much better than me. I should be blown away every time I turn the TV on. But I'm like, I can literally go there and fix one thing this week. Now, I know it's not realistic, but it hurts your feelings when you're the team you're supposed to watch and relax after a tough Friday or
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It is what it is.
It is. So, well, as I told you off air, we had one of the wildest finishes to a game.
I actually haven't heard this story for you all that are looking.
I just don't want to tell it twice. I don't want to go through this twice.
It ruins the.
We go up and we play a team. We knew we had a shot. It's a team that we played really well last year. We beat them last year. They're like everybody else. This is that senior class. They're pretty, so they're having a really good year. They were 5-2. Had a rough week the week before. They played one of the loaded, those teams that are
always having that year
at a different level right now, and everybody else is chasing to get to that level. But we went up to their place, which is a good haul it's hour and 15, maybe hour and a half on a bus. So we went up there and we played terrible the first, 5-10, probably first 10 minutes. I mean, we fumbled 2 kickoffs, which means that we also gave up a touchdown. Didn't move the ball at all on offense our first drive. Nothing good. But finally found something, got it working, got our power run game going, under center power run game going for the first time in a while. Hitting that, moving the ball, having success, got a couple other big plays hitting. I mean, and we ended up at one point 20, maybe right after the half. I think we scored right after the half, maybe 22-7, I want to say it was. Things are going good. And then we sputter. Our quarterback is struggling with some injuries. He wasn't the cause of any of the problems, but he's not going to be able to play this week. So, that's luckily I can put that out there now because this episode won't go out until after the game. But, we're hoping to get him back soon. But he fought through it, though. I mean, and played a great game. And at the end of the deal, we started to struggle with some of the things that we were handling their run game really well. We were handling their pass game really well. Our team was playing the best game that they've played all year, but they changed quarterbacks, and the quarterback was getting out on scrambles, and that was causing us some problems. And then he was making a couple throws here and there, but it was really when things broke down that we struggled. And that's frustrating, is because like you're doing everything right, and then when it all goes to hell, they're making plays, or one kid a lot of times making plays, and they've got good athletes, so I mean they really do. And so we're holding on. They could recover an onside kick, and I think we got the ball back and we couldn't move. Now that now we're trying to run the clock out, they're loading up the box and we couldn't move the ball really well. And so anyway, it ends up 22 to 20 or 22 to 20. I'm going to say 22 to 21. And then because they had gone for a 2-point conversion and didn't get it. And so they end up with the ball, they're driving, and they're moving down the field pretty good. And with 22 seconds left, and I think everyone's out of timeouts, 22 seconds left. And I think they're out of field goal range, but the quarterback scrambles and we tackle him right along the sideline, so that if right there you couldn't see. But I stand 30 yards down the field so that I can see from behind and everything. And so I could see it looked like he was in bounds. And you see the official come over and wind the clock. So again, there were 22 seconds left when the play started. Right? They have no timeouts. So we stand there and we watch this clock. Our players stay on the sidelines. We watch this clock tick down. 7. It's the slowest clock you've ever seen in your life. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. It's like New Year's is never going to get here. 2, 1, 0. Ow. We're excited. We get out on the field. Yay. There's one official standing in the middle of the field. I don't know where he was. I don't know where his flag was because there wasn't one out. And he's going, game is not over. The game is not over. And so we got to get all this chaos, get everybody back to the sidelines, figure out what's going on. Because that clock went to 0.
Right.
There were no flags on the field. He says, I took forever. I never really understood until later what had happened. He says it was a delay of game on us with 7 seconds left. And we're like, what are you talking about? So when the quarterback gets tackled on the sideline, close to the sideline, but is inbounds, the quarterback drops the ball, and one of our linebackers is like laying on the ground because we're all in there on the tackle. He stood up. He didn't actually go to the ground. He stood up, forward progress with the whistle. So he's still standing there, and as we're all kind of peeling away from this tackle, he drops the ball. He drops it into one of our guys who's laying on the ground, drops it right into his stomach. Drops it into his hands. Well, what do you do when somebody drops something in your hands? You catch it. I promise that this kid is not advanced enough in football knowledge to then, take the ball away from them and not let them have it, right? If you had said, we need that ball, he would have been like, ah! They gave him a delay of game. And so now, and I think they may have even given us like an unsportsmanlike or something and moved it closer. So now it's like they're at the 10.
Oh.
And they have 7 seconds left. We have celebrated. They're at the 10 with 7 seconds left. They bring the field goal kicker out. And their field goal, not bad, right? A good an average high school kicker, let's say. Okay, so it's like, this is in range. And in fact, it may have been like the 12 or something like that. Okay, so we line up, and we're like, we got to sell out right here. We got to go. And they line up, and, on film, it looks like our guy and their guy, I don't know who moved first, but I know who got the penalty. We get a offsides. So now this thing goes down to like, I don't know, the 8. I don't even know the yard lines. I probably don't have it all right. I'm so just like, your mind is swimming. I've gone back and watched it on film, and I'm like, I just don't want to watch this anymore. I don't want to figure it out anymore. So it's down. As my friend, one of my best friends went to that high school, so he came up to the game. And as he described it, it was basically an extra point. I was a little further back than that, but it's a chip shot, right? At this point. We're like, we got to sell out, got to go. And God dang it, our kids sold the frick out. And we blocked it. And if he hadn't blocked it, the second kid behind him that was jumping would have blocked it. And a third kid almost had his hands on it. Because they decided this game is over. We have already celebrated it. And at that point, it had gotten very chippy by then. We kind of made it through the handshake line without incident. But I can tell you at that point, we were trying to get the heck out of Caroline County because it had just gotten very chippy and intense. And I'm sure that in their minds, they were somehow cheated. Because I feel like in our minds, we were somehow cheated. I think everybody feels that way in a close game, that there were calls and things that didn't go their way. From our point of view, there's no way that these calls should have ever happened. I'm sure from their point of view, it's the total opposite, that they were somehow cheated. I don't know the thought process or whatever, but it was a huge win for us. They were 4A, they're 5-2. So, we've talked about our point system and everything.
So y'all picked up
a lot of points.
22 points for the win.
Yeah, it's 26 points. We'll give 22 for the win, I think, and then something like
2 points for
2
every.
points for every. So it was 32 points or something like that.
Wow.
I think maybe that's not right, but I'd have to pull it up. It came out today. We picked up a lot of points, and it moved us solidly into the home playoff game. So. But we basically come into a 3-way deal now and there's potential for other things to happen, but we're really into a 3-way deal. There's one team that is, I don't know if they're the 5 or the 6 right now. Like I said, we've got about a 1.5 lead at the 4, but it doesn't really matter because of the way that the schedules work out. And I think that one of the teams, the team that neither one of us play, there's 3 teams, we play one of those teams next week. Winner probably gets the 4 seed. If we win, I think we're almost locked into the 4 seed if we win. The other team doesn't play either one of us, but I think that they play 2 4As, one of which has a pretty good record. So they, if they could win one of those or both of those, then, I don't know what happens. We've all kind of done the scenarios. We kind of think like we're pretty locked into a 6, we think. And of course, you know what that means, that if you're locked with 8 teams, if you're locked into a 5 or a 6 or a 4, we're all going to play each other somehow.
Right.
Some of those 3 of those 2, 2 out of those 3 are going to play again. So, we may win or lose this Friday and turn around in 2 weeks and play each other again. And of course, we have another game after that they have a lot of points. I think they're going to be 9-0. So, that could change everything too. So it's, you can go, the good thing is it's not like you can go in and plug the scenarios in. And, somebody does. Usually somebody on Twitter or whatever will post if this happens. We can see to an extent all the scenarios. Now, if you get down to if you get into week 10, you can see all the scenarios. Week 9, it's a little bit different because everybody has 2 games left. And so there's so many points, if let's say that the team that we beat Friday wins, we get 2 points. If they lose, we get 1 point. So we could get 4 points from them if they win the next 2 games, or we could get 2 points from them if they lose the next 2. And that goes for every win that we have. That goes for every loss that we have. If they lose, we get, or excuse me, if they lose, we get nothing. If they win, we get 2. So we could get 4 points or 0 points from them. The teams that we've lost to, if they win 2, we get 2 points. If they lose 2, we get 0 points. So it's like there's so many it's kind of a wild playoff system, but that's kind of where we think we're at. Anyway, it was just a wild game.
What's super cool about y'all's system is the fact you're still got all these scenarios, right? We're luckily in a place where we're either going to be the 2 or 3 seed. Mm-hmm. It's the game we play this Friday. Whoever wins the game's the 2 seed. Whoever loses the game is the 3 seed, because that's just, there's 8 teams in our district. We've played all these games. We know, obviously, as it almost always happens, there's an undefeated, there's a completely defeated, there's a 1 loss, there's a 1 win, and then people in the middle are kind of generally battling it out.
Well, that's where we're at, yeah.
Yeah, we're both 1 loss in district teams, and so we've both lost to the undefeated team. Weirdly enough, our schedule is reversed. So they played the 1 win in district team last week. We play them next week. So it's, we don't get all the points and stuff. So we kind of know, we'll lock it in.
Yeah, it's easier. You get standings and it. And we have a lot of scenarios where, I think it's I think if you did the most outrageous, I think we could possibly be anywhere from a 2 to a 7, but realistically it's anywhere from a 4 to a 6, but it's potentially, more.
Hilarious.
2 would absolutely be.
Because it would definitely pay you back, right? I think we talked about last week how your strength of schedule could really pay off here in the end.
Sure. Yeah. It would be
Even though y'all got worked over a few games. You had a tough stretch.
We had a brutal stretch.
And
one of the teams
that's
up in that 2-3 is one of the teams that we had a really hard time with now. I think we can do a lot better, and maybe if we have a second chance at it, not in the middle of that brutal stretch, we'll see it. But we did have a lead on them briefly too. For one time.
Well,
yeah, let's get
real quick about my week, and then we'll move. We're going to talk some bracket coverage or double coverage tonight. Our week was pretty good. I mean, it was a blowout victory. It was one of those. First of all, kudos to that head coach and the fact that they're needing wins. This was a team that's, I think they're 2-5 or something coming into this game, and they apparently suspended their starting quarterback, their backup quarterback, and their third string quarterback. And the third string, I think, got to come in. He got to come in and play the second half. So kudos to you, man. Like, you talk about culture. I think, a couple weeks ago we talked about building culture, and it was defensively and interception or turnover culture. But dude, you're pulling at straws for your job, or whatever, and you're willing to set people down and suspend them for a game. So kudos to him.
It pays off in the long run. It really does.
Because that kid that they brought in the second half was shaky, and I mean, like, could get. And he got a couple. I mean, we shut him out in the first half, and they put up 2 scores in the second half that were just him making people miss. So if he'd got the whole game, even, it probably would have been a little bit different. But I did get to meet a listener of the podcast, which was super cool. And that's the first time, I think, that as a coach, I've opposed someone that listens to the podcast at the varsity level.
I've played against members, which is funny because I know their defense.
Right. Yeah.
It's always been humorous. It's been a while.
Cameron, obviously the OC that I'm working with now, he was the OC last year. I was a DC for our freshman teams, but at the varsity level, I've never had it happen. Anyway, it was really neat to meet him. So, Coach, what's up, man? I'm glad we got to have a conversation before the game because we had kind of a chippy ending too. So we just got out of there as quick as we could. But anyway, it was good. It's good to be where we're at. We got a tough one this week. Hope we go get the win, get the 2 seed, and we're in that weird scenario though, Joe, where it's like if we get the 2 seed. Number one, this coaching staff is win out. Like, let's go. Let's win the game.
Yeah.
But if we win, we get the 2 seed. We get a home playoff game. If we win it, second round, we get the number 1 team in the state.
Right.
Who's a monster.
Right.
If we get the 3 seed, we're in a away playoff game, but a more favorable path deeper into the playoffs. So it's like, yes, you're always on the road, but you get week 2 is another beatable team. Now they're still a 1 seed from another district, but they aren't the number 1 team in the state. Right. So it's like that, just because of the way our districts are and the way they match them up, if you lose this week, like, it's not the end of the world. It sucks. Right. We don't get another home playoff game, but we might get to go reface Sulphur, who, dismantled us a couple weeks ago. So anyway, It's just one of those scenarios where you're like, what do you do? Right. So it should be fun. Anyway, let's pay the bills, and then we'll get out and talk some double coverage.
Yeah, you can check out joedanielfootball.com/system to get access to a new guide that I have put together, a new manual that is how to build your ultimate defensive football system. It's going to talk about the key components of a system, what a system is, what it's got to have in it, and the big mistakes that you need to avoid in putting together a system, and then how to install that system. And so it's kind of system agnostic. It's more about choosing your system and preparing for it. So it's not a 4-2-5 or 3-3 manual, but really important that you have that system in place. And you can download that manual for free by going to joedanielfootball.com/system.
Also, I want to talk about athleticspeedmovement.com. I know we've been talking about it for a while now, but it's getting to that point in the season where if your season's getting close to over, in fact, this comes out next Thursday, which will be a lot of teams week 10. So you kind of know if you got playoffs or don't, hopefully. Tomorrow night, good luck in either your last game or one leading into the playoffs. But athleticspeedmovement.com, you can jump over and get Del Basquet's, it's his life work, right? It's the thing he's been putting together literally the entirety of his life. This is the very first speed coach in the NFL working with the Seattle Seahawks. And now we've got, 45 or 6 or however many years it is of experience.
6 at least, yeah.
And he's basically just handed it all to us and said, let's get this stuff out there. His ability to do it is diminishing. Obviously, been working on something for 46 years. You're getting on. So in age, and
he still gets out there.
He does still get out there. The guy still travels. But we can just do so much more with it online. So that's where we got it, athleticspeedmovement.com. Jump over there, sign up today, start your off season off the right way, building speed and agility for that next season. Sweet. Let's do it, man. Let's get into some questions. Part 1, we talked about we're going to talk brackets or double coverages. It's something that, weirdly enough, I've asked our head coach a couple games here recently, like, hey, if that dude shows up and plays like he has on some films, do we have a way to eliminate him from the equation, right? This goes back to kind of your count system. Like, not every kid's a 1.
Right.
So how do I make my defense balanced when a kid is a 2 and my DBs are 1s? So that's kind of what I want to get into, is how can we get on top of either 2 receivers or 1 receiver and eliminate whatever it is they're trying to do. So the first question has to be, what is bracket or double coverage?
Yeah, we use a lot of different ways that this can go, because bracket, I suppose it's a universal term, fairly universal as far as football goes, but not one that I use. So that's a me problem. We use the terminology we use a couple different terminologies. We use from TCU, we use fiddle and banjo, which are by no means universal at all. Fiddle is a 2-on-1 for us, and banjo is a 2-on-2, kind of like a read type of thing, but it can depend on, what we have. But there's different forms of banjo, and then we have what most people would consider bracket coverage is what I usually just call a star coverage, because who you're bracketing, right? It's your star. And so we would use a star coverage, and usually we use a star check on that because of the fact that it's generally going to be out of a cover 1, but it becomes a cover 0 because it's usually our free safety that is going to be one guy in the bracket. So essentially what you're doing is you're looking at a receiver who is, like you said, double dangerous. Like, he is the best player on the field. Because if you're going to put 2-on-1, that's the normal way that people talk about this. So like when we use a banjo or we use a fiddle 2-on-1 in our package, just as an example, that could be on a running back who's in the backfield and our linebackers in cover 1. The guy who's going to be responsible for him is the guy whose side he goes out to. That's still a 2-on-1. What we're doing then is we're matching, the side that he goes to, putting the guy who has a better position to get to him, and the other guy's going to go low hole. They're not running with him all over the field. So if he releases to the left, then the linebacker to that side picks him up, and the other linebacker goes low hole in a cover 1 and plays for crossers. So we can do it that way. We will do it, we will also have to do that sometimes with guys that are behind the line of scrimmage, H-back and stuff, just on whether or not they're going to run to the flat or whatever. And that sometimes will become a bracket, will become a banjo 2-on-2, which is still just based on the release. But in the normal, what we call star coverage, what most people call bracket coverage, you're finding a star on the field. This thing is, sorry about that, guys, bother me. The foam piece was a little bit off of the microphone. You essentially are trying to take away 2 different releases for him at one time. So a lot of times the terminology of double coverage is just like, or we put 2 guys on him. And I've seen people do that where they're just like, put 2 guys on him. And, the strategy behind that, you've got to have a plan. Like, you've got to have a strategy. So like, just as an example, I've seen this, and we've had the fortune of coaching some really good receivers, and seeing some good and some bad brackets. I'll give you one example that I think is not a bad bracket, but like, if you understand it, like, so normally usually there's either an inside and an outside, or there's a press. If you play both guys off, one guy plays inside, one guy plays outside. So one guy's playing for inside releases, one guy's playing for outside releases. They can play. And when I say they're still going to be there, right? We're not going to leave him. If he releases outside, we're not just going to be like, oh, there he goes. You can do that too. He releases outside and you let him go. So for example, I could put my free safety inside of number 2.
Right.
And if he releases, and my strong safety, let's say, outside of number 2, and the strong safety may be locked on him no matter what, but the free safety, if he sees an outside release, goes, not much I can do with that. And then he goes back to the middle of the field. And then that way you're not completely abandoning everyone. You're just saying, all right, if he releases outside, I've got a pretty good cover guy. You can do that if they've got a 1.5 and you've got a couple ones, right? If I can align him outside and, have enough attention on him to where when he releases outside breaking route, I've got him, then that's okay. If he's a 2 and I got a couple 1s or 0.75s, we ain't releasing anybody, especially if everybody else out there is a 0.75. We're going to put our guys on him, and we've played that game before where this is the guy we have to stop. If we stop this guy, nobody else on the field can beat us, period. And so that's generally what people are trying to do with a bracket. And you might only do it on third down situations. A lot of times when we've had to do it, it's been an all game plan. Like, this kid can beat us. This kid can go for 80 at any time. And so we either play an inside and an outside. They have to be leveled off and everything, but an inside and an outside, or we'll play a press and an off. And of course, when you play a press and an off, you're either pressing with outside leverage and playing off with inside leverage, or pressing with inside leverage and playing off with outside leverage. And of course, there's a lot of things that go with that. Like, we had a team that played really bad press. They put a very weak defender in press, and we didn't have any problem getting off of his press. And so then you just had off man. He played very bad press, the kind where you open up immediately, and so that press doesn't disrupt the route at all. And so he would just run a vertical stem unaffected, and then they had the off guy inside leverage, and so he would just run a vertical fade route, and that guy's 3 yards inside. And it was comical. They got out of it pretty quick. That was a fun one, actually, because they also left the box wide open, and by taking that guy out, and we were better than them in the run game too. That was a fun one. That was like, it was entertaining. But so you got to kind of think through what you're going to do. But yeah, you're either pressing or, and the press has to disrupt the route, and then you've got a guy. A lot of teams just play. It's almost like no thought process. Teams that don't. Not everybody thinks about leverage,
which is weird.
It blows my mind
because I had a really good DC growing up, so I think about leverage every play because I was taught align by leverage on defense. Right? It's like you teach your align to perform on your H-backs for power or counter. Same thing.
And it just doesn't. And it escapes kids sometimes, but but I know from dealing with a lot of coaches and talking to a lot of coaches, it's like leverage is not the way that leverage is not. Everybody doesn't understand leverage. There's certain things that, like, I think wrestling really helps you understand leverage. And I wasn't a wrestler. Well, I was an 0-5 JV wrestler my freshman year.
Let's go.
But so Iowa did not call. Oklahoma State did not call. The bigger programs were unaware of my accomplishments. But I did coach wrestling for a few years. And that's where I learned a lot about leverage and body position. And, like, I've had coaches who it's like, especially when I was younger and I didn't understand that everybody didn't understand. I'm like, yeah, he's going to wrong arm the trap. This is back when we used to teach wrong arming. And everybody doesn't understand that, like, what happens on a wrong arm, where if you hit his inside shoulder, it turns you both. And then you're standing there in the hole, and everybody doesn't see that. Players don't all see that. Coaches don't all see that. And some of you are sitting there going, everybody knows that. You're incorrect. I can tell you're incorrect. And so everybody doesn't understand leverage. And so I see people just press with a guy and play off with a guy. And the guys are basically just like pressed and off, like basically head up, and it's like, whoa, I get anything I want out of that. It's like, yeah, if I beat the guy, and then you see the same thing with press coverage where guys are tilted a lot in press coverage. You can't play press coverage tilted, right? Just run around you. And it's infuriating.
What you said to start all this was the kid was playing press, but he wasn't touching anyone. That gives me nightmares when I watch people's film and they're like, how can I do better on defense? And I'm like,
yeah,
well, let's just get in a foot race, but you turn around backwards.
Right.
And who can run to 21 yards fastest?
If you're going to press, you must disrupt the route.
You got to put some hands on. So
if I'm facing the wrong direction and I don't disrupt the route, And you don't have to put hands on him. And that, I think that's a big thing too, because offhand jam is very difficult to teach. Two-hand jam can get you in a lot of trouble. And worse than two-hand jam is the coach who's like, we're going to attack him.
Right.
Because I'm just going to go by you.
Yes.
Boom.
You're going to look hilarious.
And you are here, and that guy's 3 yards behind you. So press is more about absorbing the route than it is, knocking the guy off the route. And so
right. Just make him take bad steps or whatever, right? Just get in his way.
Press is a lot more offensive lineman than it is defensive back. Press is posting and kick sliding and staying over top of that man as long as possible. And then you got to turn and burn him and hopefully be faster than an offensive lineman when he does get by you. But if I'm pass proing a speed rusher, it is no different. A right tackle or a left tackle pass proing a speed rusher is no different than playing a guy who's trying to run a fade route. Other than at some point, the fade route tries to go by you and the speed rusher tries to turn the corner.
Right.
Anyway, there's our entire podcast on press.
Our message within the message.
Bracket coverage. Your press coverage needs to get better.
For sure.
Before you bracket a guy, by the way, find out if he can get off of good press coverage. We've had so many guys. And look, you've got to talk about, here's an important thing to talk about. What is it? Like, what does he have to do to beat you? To really beat you? If I had a kid who was athletically good enough, we played this game. I had a kid who was athletically good enough to run. And this receiver I think he went to UVA. That's where the good receivers all go here that we play. It seems like everyone's like a UVA kid. And you're like, okay, cool. Oh, yeah, one at Michigan State, and we've had a few. Not on my team. Oh. None of mine have gone anywhere yet, but we had some really good ones. The kid that we were defending into UVA, and I want to say I know we lost a close game, with them, but our game plan was basically the kid was aggressive, strong, but short, and the kid that our DB. And their receiver was tall and built, high school version of Megatron, which is not Megatron, right. But, at high school level.
Looks the part.
All D3, all D1 receivers look like Megatron against high school corners. And we were like, listen, here's the deal. Press him, because we played press coverage 90% of the time. Press him. Nobody else has really pressed him. We're going to press him. We're not going to commit another guy to him. We had that in. It was like a third down call. We would call star coverage and bring the guy over. But we knew they could run the ball too, so we couldn't just commit everything to him. They had other good players. They had a good backfield. And we said, press him. And if the ball goes in the air, maul him. Because it's high school. And it's not a spot foul.
That's
just
right.
Maul him. And they won't call more than 4. They won't call more than 4. And I think he had 165 yards and 1 touchdown. But again, he was the Division I kid on the field, and we were able to commit. We ended up losing because I think our offense just couldn't get it done that week. But they didn't run the score up on us by any means. It's just our offense was sputtered. And so he kept us in the game. We were able to play that, lock him up, and I think he got 3 pass interference calls. And he had 165, and I think most of it was on 80 or something like that was on 1 catch. So it just is. And that was the touchdown. And it was like 165. If we can commit the other 10 to stopping the rest of their offense, fine with that.
That's okay.
Fine with that. So you've got to define what is that dominant? What are you okay with? I think that's I'm sure one of our next questions, which we're already into, is when to use bracket coverage.
Yeah.
And that guy's got to be so good that you must commit 2 guys to him in that situation. Now, if you're going to do it every single down, he better be so good that in any situation, he can blow the doors off of anybody. Because if I can just lock my 1.25 on your 1.75 guy, we can probably get by. Or if I've got, like I said, I had a kid he's probably a 1. Their kid was a 1.75, right? And they just said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break all the rules and hold and whatever and see what happens. And that was okay. Like that was not a bad, that was a okay strategy to allow the other 10 to, again, play against a good football team. Now, if I can stop everything, I've played this game too. If I can stop everything else you can do with 9, if I can win a 9-on-10 against your other 10 guys, then I can commit 2 guys essentially to that guy. We played that kid. He was the best kid on the field by a mile. And we had and they moved him all around, and we had a coverage check for every single alignment he could be in. Anything he can line up in the single receiver in the trips. He could line up number 3, number 2 in the trips. He could line up there. He could line up in a wing. He could line up. We had an alignment check for him where and each one, there's probably really total of 3 or 4, but they were just wherever he was, we had a different check. If he's number 1, if he's number 3, if he's solo, we got a different check. And that was because the tendencies on what he had run, what they had thrown to him in those different alignments. So he goes here, he's running a bubble. He goes here, he's running a fade. So he goes here to run a bubble, we're going to be inside and outside, right? And we're going to be tight inside and loose outside. If he goes to run and nobody's back, we just got a regular safety over top. We're playing 3 over 3 under zone coverage by everybody else. So there's still a safety over top. If for some reason he ran to them, he never did. But like if he goes outside and he's the number 1, he's running a fade. Okay, now we want to press him and have inside leverage and squeeze the fade ball. So all just different things that we could do. I say press him with inside. We pressed him with inside leverage and played inside leverage because you go out and line out on the numbers. There's no reason to play outside leverage when I'm squeezing anybody. I want him. I got sidelines. So now we had 3 over 2 because I got corner, I got star coverage, and I got sideline. We're just going to make you live here. You're not doing anywhere else. And then we'll have 2 guys out there. So in that situation, it was a 9 on, and that one worked. And then when that broke down was when they moved him to quarterback. And it was like, God dang it, we can't bracket him at quarterback.
You can. It's called a spy, right?
We had spy him with 10. Thank God he couldn't throw. That kid, they got him a quarterback. He made plays I've never seen on a football field. But we won that game.
That pushes into our second question and kind of our third one too, because
that's just
when you describe bracket coverage,
guide. It's not rules.
That's right. It's guidelines. It's like the speed limit.
Yeah. Nobody.
So I ask why do we carry this in our defense? And I go back to, I think it was last year where we were discussing defense, and basically you just need to ensure that your defense is, we talk about keeping it simple all the time, but there has to be enough complexity that you can handle these things. Like you just said, what if the kid that has been there, I'm going to line him up and throw fade balls. That's how they've played the other 1 to 9 games on film. And now he comes out as quarterback. What are we going to do, right? And it can't be a thing that we practiced all week because we practiced him running fade balls and now he's at quarterback. So that's why I think you have to carry this type of stuff, because you're going to come into that wherever it is. And now with transfer portal, like in Oklahoma, we have one, right? You never know what kid's going to show up. Now, of course, we have rules, so it has to be preseason, but you're not just looking for the senior that they've groomed from freshmen that you're like, oh, he's getting better. We better take care of him on defense this year. No, now it can just be a dude that moved in from wherever he came from. I think that's why you got to carry this kind of stuff in your defense. So the question is, why do we need to carry it? And it's because you just never know what situation you're going to see. In the world of high school football, there's so much that goes on now on offense. The rules are chaotically, the offense has just got the unfair advantage, right? And so you've been able to change the things back into your favor. We talked about it earlier a little bit. And so the 2-on-1, guys, you get it, right? You're going to either, you said it earlier, Joe, inside, outside him, you're going to shallow, deep him. You're going to find a way that, look, if the 4'2", 40 guy is on your 4'8" and 5'2", 40 guys, because it's your linebacker and you're starting and your free safety, I don't have to run a track meet with him. I have to align where he's going to go. But I got to do it in 2 places at the same time. I got to take the hitch and bubble away, and I got to take the fade ball away or the vertical. Right?
But you've got to look at, like, and if you look at Dub Maddox's stuff, and like we talked about capology and some of his other things, and what routes are in his terminology. It's complicated as hell, but the first chapter or 2 is a nice introduction to capped routes and all that sort of stuff, and understanding it will help you if leverage is something that escapes you right now. That might not be the best place to start, but it's a place to start because it's very much based on leverage, right? And so, like, it's not just inside and outside. I mentioned the bubble. Like, okay, if we're going to bracket a guy and he's in a position where we think that he's going to run a bubble, well, it doesn't help at all to have one guy 7 yards off inside shade and one guy 8 yards off outside shade.
Right.
Because the bubble's going to be caught either way. And then he's the best athlete on the field just trying to shake our guys, and they probably got blockers and all that sort of stuff. So when we played the kid that was going to run the bubble, we had one guy like 3 yards off the ball or off of him and 5 yards outside, and the other kid was like 5 yards off and 1 yard inside because we weren't worried about that. We could collision him. So it's like, if he's in a position as a number one receiver where the routes that you're most concerned about are, say, a hitch and a post. Well, I want to press the hitch because it's hard to run a hitch from press, off press, good, decent press, inside leverage press. But then I might put my guy, or I might go outside leverage because he wants to run a fade or a post, let's say. Like, if I want to take away the post, I'll line up 3-4 yards inside leverage at 7 or 8 yards off. And like, I'm taking away the post. If I want to take away the slant, don't play, if you talk about inside and outside, don't play inside shade and outside shade because that's not good enough. We talk about it all the time. 7 by, the alignment of our corners is 7x2 inside leverage.
Yeah.
Basic cover 3. I mean, that's just basic cover 3. Also, same place we're going to play an off man, by the way. And because off man is just cover 3, but I don't, if I play off cover 1, it's cover 3, but I don't have to worry about anybody else but that guy. But it's the same place. And I got sideline help and all that sort of stuff. You can maybe play a little tighter because you don't have to cover a number 2 route kind of thing, but not much. But the technique is all the same. I just don't have to look at the quarterback. Just look at the guy. But like, that's leverage. Like, that's, what are you taking away? And you talked about it, like, and I talk to our DBs about it all the time. It's like, listen, you take, Kirby Smart talked about it with the way that they played cover 3, go back 10 years ago, Kirby Smart in a clinic, maybe even longer, maybe 15 years ago now, and Kirby Smart in a clinic. Nick Saban was speaking next door in Atlanta, and in the assembly hall next door. This is 2009 or whatever. And I think Saban, maybe they just won their first national title. I don't remember what the years were, somewhere around there. And Saban's in one room, and the entire, every coach in Georgia and the surrounding states is in this assembly hall in the Galleria. And I'm in a room with me and like 25 other claustrophobic people who are like, nah, I don't want to be in there. I'm going to go see this guy. It's Kirby Smart. And
who knew?
Kirby talks about, well, I knew Kirby because he played at Georgia. So, but I didn't know this. So he says, they play cover 3 all spring. That's the only covers they play. And they get roasted, right? Because they're playing Alabama's offense. So they're getting roasted because they're in nothing but cover 3. But they have to do it because he talks about how they're learning leverage and they're learning all of these things. And they're learning how to play. Their corners are learning. He's focused mainly on the secondary. Their corners are learning how to split 2 verticals in cover 3.
And take a bolt away.
Talking about 2/3 of their attention on the inside receiver, 1/3 of their attention on the outside receiver because it's a longer throw and they've got more time. So I talked to our DBs about take away one route. We can generally at the high school level narrow this down to a handful of routes that they run in any given situation. We can look at their splits. We can look at, if he's got a 16-yard split, it's probably not an out route, right? We can, if it's probably a slant, it's probably, very likely. So we can look at those things. And so what we can say is, okay, align definitely inside leverage. If that's where you need to be 100% inside leverage. So if I'm just talking passing concepts, passing routes, goal line, right? If I'm on a number 1 receiver on the goal line, what routes can you run? Well, you can run a slant and a fade. That's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it. There's different routes happening, but if I'm in man coverage on a number 1 receiver on the goal line, he can run a slant or a fade. So I'm going to align, let's say we're playing, maybe not goal line, maybe red zone, whatever, but I'm going to align significantly inside leverage. And then I'm going to play the fade. because I took away the slant by my alignment. If he runs the slant, he runs into me. I've got it. And so at that point, I go, okay, he can run a slant or a fade. So now I'm going to put my body 2/3 to play the slant. I'm going to put my mind 2/3 to play the fade. So all of my physical attention is on the slant. All of my mental attention is on the fade. And I can do that. I can do it the other way around, right? I can play a little bit more off and, but still inside, but a little bit tighter. And I'm thinking, with my body, I'm taking away the fade and with, whatever. But the concept is that I'm going to take those things away with leverage. And so you don't just put a guy inside and a guy outside. You don't just press one guy and put one guy off. You can. That's going to be way more ineffective than positioning guys to take away routes based on where they're at. So what I just said about putting 2/3 of your attention here and 2/3 of your body here, well, you can now do that when you run bracket with two guys. I can put one guy here and 100% of his attention, 90% of his attention is on the slant, and put the other guy here and 90% of his attention is on the fade. And that's what they're there to do. Why am I here? To play the slant. Why am I here? To play the fade. If they throw the fade, is the other guy just going to watch it go over his head? Of course not. But he's 90-10, 80-20, as opposed to just putting guys, we're going to put two guys on him. If you just say, I'm going to put two guys on him with no thought process of what he might run, it's better.
Right.
But
maybe it's not because
maybe not. Yeah, because they might be overplaying. He's not going to run. Yeah. And then you've got to look at, we've talked about when do you bracket. It's not just that guy's so good. If I have a guy who's as good, I'm just going to lock him up, or almost as good. It doesn't have to be as, if you've got an FBS and I've got an FCS, okay, they're not that different. They're both and again, understand that I work with small, medium-sized football teams at the high school level. So you guys that are we have 9 Division I players on the field at any given time. I don't know what you're doing listening to us. You're just bored. I don't live in that world. So if there is a D1 receiver on the field,
it's special.
It's special. He stands out. Now, I might play 3 of them in a year, but again, they're 3 guys at 3 different schools, probably in different grades,
Right.
and it's and everybody knows when there's an FBS or an FCS kid on the field, everybody knows who he is. There's only, when you talk about small school level, there's not 9 of them on the field. There's 1 or 2. And then we're talking about places that aren't heavily recruiting. Big counties, you get who you get. Small cities, in my case, you get who you get. So if I can put that guy on the field, if I can take again, and I don't know if we talked about the count as much this episode, but we consider an average player to be a 1. We consider a bad football player when we talk about the count, an average player is a 1. A bad football player, we might call him a half a player, right? And a great football player, that FBS kid, is a 2. That SEC kid, he might be a 2.5. I don't know. We might need 3 guys to cover him. 2 might not be enough. 2 average guys. But if I got a 1.5 and a 1.75 or a 2, I can probably just teach him what this kid does really well and have him mentally prepared to defend the things that he does really well. And at least in non-passing situations, not have to commit an extra guy to that guy.
Right.
You don't always have to double team guys to stop them. You can coach. It is better, like I said, and I say that because it's better than just putting 2 guys out there and saying, we're going to double team this guy with no thought process.
I think, another place that we carry this, and for some reason, we do this without the concern, and I think we'll go 2 over 2, right? We've talked about compressed sets. We've talked about stacked sets, right? You get double stacked or whatever it is. You got to do the same type of stuff, right? And now if you think about it in this realm of 2 over 1, you're probably getting the slant and the fade, right? These guys are compressed for a reason.
Sure.
Or they're stacked for a reason.
Right.
And it's for your kids to freak out, try to play man when they're about to watch an anthill go every which way and try to hang on to their man, right? And so, this is something that I picked up in JDFB. Like, that was one of the very first things I learned was the banjo rules, stacked receivers. And I think that's another place that it just really shines. Yeah, sure, we're in cover one, and we call cover one. And then you stack these guys, and we immediately go, oh, okay, never mind. We're going to play banjo. We're going to inside-outside this.
Yep.
Or you can deep shallow it here too, right? Like, it doesn't matter which way you want to. The concept is one of my guys does not give a crap who runs a fade ball. He's just taking the dude that runs into his zone.
He was a coach from Alabama, and he came to JMU, and I don't know his name. I feel bad about it. But he spoke at a local clinic here years ago, and he talked about defending stacked receivers. And he said, what we did at Alabama. And I'm, notebook out. Here we go.
Right.
Because I think that this is obviously the way to do it. And he said, we press, if you stack two receivers, we press the front receiver, the number one, what we call him the number one, right? The guy on the ball is the number one. The guy behind him is the number two. So we play one guy up and one guy back. But we press the number one receiver, but he's playing man on the number two. And I was like, that's it. So he's disrupting the release of number one, but when he gets off, he's whichever way number two goes. So he can play head up, get in his way. And then if number two goes inside, he comes off of it and takes him. So the press guy disrupts that release of the stack. And then he comes off and plays man, and the other guy picks up and I was like, this is it. This is the way. I have never in my life gotten that to work. And kids are just minds blown by it. Like that. So press number one, but you're man on number two. It seemed like conceptually to me, but like to a kid, it's like, and then you've got to get off to the right side and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I don't have the guy that's pressing at Alabama.
Clearly. But what if they're both just blocking? Like, that's the other things you have to identify here when you get these bunch sets, these stack sets, is they're still run fit.
Yeah,
gap,
right.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think that they're in that situation. They were committed to the pass. So you do it in a cover zero type situation
for sure. But you can do the same thing with banjo and tell him, "Hey, yeah, you're going to break it off on number one, but you're the flat player, so sure, get your punch and then settle in the flat. I don't even really care where number two goes because if he runs inside, I got a linebacker over there, right? Yeah. So it just becomes that."
So we would just press. So we would still play inside and outside on. We would press the inside guy, play inside leverage press. Or you can play outside leverage press, depending on the alignment. But I could play inside leverage press, and you tell him, like, all right, you're pressing on this guy unless number two crosses your face to the inside. Then because you're already in position to take that inside release.
Right.
And you can do that. And I would rather do that with the inside release because at least I have a linebacker potentially to help there, somebody inside potentially help, especially with the cover one situation. The pressing is definitely harder than just playing an inside and outside off man. I usually would break the press off and play inside and outside off leverage rather than the press and the over. And the only time that I would do the press is, like you said, you mentioned blocking. In my head, I'm thinking screen, right? So if the front guy is blocking, then you're in a great position because you're attacking the block. He's not able to get upfield. You can then play through the man to the ball, or at least to funnel him one way or the other.
Right.
And so you can get a lot of mileage out of that. But so that could probably be very effective against the screen. And I think we've pressed against screen type stuff a lot more. Always pressed against
man. Yeah, we always punt, or we call it like a bunch breaker or whatever.
The bunch always, 100%. Always. Always.
Next question here, and just the next level of this is like, all right, we've talked about cover one, and now we can zone our cover one over here. But how do we run these in all of our base defenses? So we talked about Kirby Smart runs cover three all spring. So that's most teams are running cover three.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I bracket?
I don't know if he still does, but yeah,
or double coverage in cover three without like how do I do it and still stay sound cover three?
So one of the ways you can do it is play a 3 under 3 deep, but man the guy up. We've done that. So instead of playing 3 under 4 deep cover three, you pick one guy, you play your 3 deep shell, You play your 3 underneath zone blitz coverage, but instead of blitzing a 5th man, you take that 5th man and you lock him up man on that guy. So as you are playing man, he is running through everyone's zones. So whatever zone he is in, you have double coverage. Yeah. So you have one less blitzer, but you have that man plus a guy over top. And if you think about it, cover 2 man essentially operates that way across the board, right? We have 5 guys in man coverage, and then we have 2 guys over top that are playing deep halves. Cover 1 doesn't operate that way because the cover 1 deep safety is only playing the middle of the field. I can only guarantee having somebody to help on routes that come to the middle of the field. In 2 man, I can guarantee that I have 2, right. In 2 man, I can guarantee having a defender over top and a man coverage underneath. So it's essentially what 2 man does. By no means is 2 man sound against the run at all. But the 3 under 3 deep is still run sound. You're losing 1 guy, but you still have your force players. You still have all of that. You could potentially have some gap fit issues in certain situations, but I think if you just take that 1 man, you're okay. Pattern match is somewhat, if you run a pattern match, it's somewhat this concept, right? In that we are going to be
3-2, for example, is 2 over 2.
It's 2 over 2, right? It's you get a lot of 2 over 2. It's not really 2 over 2 because they could run things that don't become 2 over 2. But the reality of let's say you run press quarters. Well, the reality of press quarters is that he's man on that guy unless he gets a immediate inside release. And so if you get a post route, I'm playing man on it, but that post route is running to the safety, who's playing over top. And so you can get that 2 over 1, but it's not as predictable. It's not as committed. So you look at a typical robber coverage, and a robber coverage, whether it's an old school cover 3 type robber coverage where the free safety is just more aggressive, jumping underneath curl routes and post routes instead of just playing over top. That's the way the robber was played back before. We had 10 personnel on the field all the time. And now we see robber to a side. So your typical quarters coverage is a robber where, if number 2 doesn't go vertical, then I drop underneath number 1. That still leaves me, if number 1 and number 2 run vertical, it still leaves me in a one-on-one situation with both guys. So I can get a second guy in zone coverage, but it's not as predictable that way. So the only way that I've done it is, and you could also do a 4 under 2 deep zone and then man 1 guy. But either one of those fire zone coverages, and I don't like the concept of 3 under, 2 under 3 deep type stuff, but some people do, like with 6-man stuff. You could do that, but how much do we want to do that, and how much are we leaving open? You could do a more loose zone with everybody else. Again, the critical thing is at the high school level, if nobody else can hurt you, then that's fine. We're just playing man and everybody else is hanging out looking to see where he goes. Now, where's their positioning? Where's their drop? Well, it needs to be based on what he can do. Because if I'm doing that, everything is based on what he can do, right? My cover 3 drop is based on, my deep third drop is based on he's number 1 receiver and I got to take away his, post route, fade route, whatever. My hook curl drop is based on the fact, or my hook curl drop or my curl flat drop, even better, is based on the fact that what do I have to defend from him? A slant route or a hitch route or an out route. What does he run? Not many teams run a hitch, a slant, and then an out effectively. They don't throw it effectively, even if that guy can run it effectively. So that's what I'm thinking with it.
The run fits, I think, is what's the scariest part there. And of course you want to say, hey, we only bracket in past situations, but the fact of the matter is, if there is this Megatron type kid out there, even if it is 3rd and 1, the dude can still take anything to the house.
Sure.
Right? So power away from him sucks, but he can take it too. So it's like, is there any way we can make this work? Can we change fronts? Like, do you get more of does getting a defensive lineman on or off the field help? Does any of that affect it, or do you just kind of have to roll the dice sometimes?
Let's say you're in a 3-2, 3-4 look. If we played 3 under 3 deep and rushed 4, we would probably be rushing a middle linebacker, maybe, for our edge rusher type of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a way, but
I think it's just
difficult at the high school level.
You end up in 9-man spacing, 8-man spacing. You're looking at like now an outside backer has to come out and press with a corner deep, right? That would be
I mean, that's your
way.
names and personnel. It's like I can always just stick my best cover guy there and move my outside backer to be the zone guy. You know, if I assume I've got a corner, you know, if I'm in a 3-4 look, right, I've got 2 safeties and 2 corners on the field. So of those 4 guys, I can put 3 deep and 1 locked up in man coverage. I still have my alley defender. I have my force. It depends on the front and everything. I think you can still do it pretty soundly with 5, a force, an alley. And of course, this is all assuming like a 10 personnel or 11, you know, something like that. It starts to change. But I think if you force alley, I would have to draw it up.
I understand.
Because you're right. You know, that would be my one thing is, can I do it down in and down out? I don't know. But it's definitely better than committing 2 guys 100% to that guy.
For sure.
You know, and maybe you could, depending on his alignment, let's say he's a slot, maybe I can play him with outside leverage. And that way I can still kind of be involved in the run fit as a force, you know, if he squeezes down or something like that. But you're right. Like, you look at some of the most effective goal line throws. Like, look at the goal line throws where it's just the hoss catching the ball on an immediate screen and just getting across the goal line. It's like, what do you do to bracket that? You know, it's pretty much, those things are stealing.
Especially in today's RPO world where like it truly is GT counter.
Right.
As soon as your force guy comes and plays it, and now they're just throwing.
Or even just, I mean, in high school, even just a pre-snap read. It's like pre-snap, like, all right, I got like the count here. I got 3 over 3 and one guy's deep enough for 2 over 3 and taking it and just stealing it.
Yeah. So there are, I mean, you got to draw it up. I like what you said earlier. You need to have a reasoning, right? You have to think through this stuff. You can't just say, you 2 guys go cover him, get them aligned properly, take away what he's good at, take away the most common routes, take away what can hurt you right here, right now, and then kind of just play football, right? The rest of it will.
And situationally, I mean, you know, look at alignment, look at all that sort of stuff. Like, you get every clue that you can. Like, if that's the guy, like, honestly, it should never just be an afterthought. Like, that guy's good, we're going to put 2 on him. Like, that should be if he's that good, that should be the central focus of your defensive game plan. Because if you're committing, if you're willing to commit 2 and play 9 on 10 against the rest of the defense, that's like soccer, right? They just play for a while with one less guy and like everybody's okay with it. Like, that's not football.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't work in football.
Hockey with this penalty box, right?
Yeah, like, that doesn't work. You know what the penalty kill would be? You know what the ratio would be if they just took your middle linebacker off the field for 2 minutes of game time?
You would practice all the rules a lot more, I guarantee it.
Well, you're screwed. Because like you said, we lose run fits, we lose everything. So if you're going to play that, like, honestly, guys, think about it. Like, and I know hockey works on it all the time, and I'm sure soccer does too, but whatever. You know, they're not real sports. Just kidding. I love hockey. And soccer's a sport.
It's a sport.
I like it. I like it once every 4 years. Well, yeah, really? Whatever the cycle is. You know, and I like it in the Olympics too. So every once in a while, get really excited. Go America.
If not, I still hate it.
Yeah. So, like, you've got to think about that though. When you just double cover guys and you just say put 2 guys on him, you're playing 9 on 10, and it just, there's a reason there's no penalty box in football. We just mark off yards because it wouldn't work. Not 11 on 11 is you really, and you've done it, like, you understand this. 11 on 11 is a beautiful game. The way that the fits happen, the way that the blocks happen, the way that it is such an incredible, however, and I don't know the 12-man game well enough. I watch a lot of 8-man and 9-man, and I try to figure out, like, okay, it's a little different. The 11 on 11, like, that's the secret sauce. That's why that's the sport. That's why it's the NFL. That's why it's the Super Bowl. All of these things. It is a beautiful game. And if you did that and you made it 11 on 10 for 2 minutes, it would be a disaster. Might get away with it in high school. In the NFL, no way. No, absolutely no way. The scoring percentage in a 11 on 10 situation would be 90% plus. They just would. And so when you make that decision to do that, down in and down out especially, if you make it do situationally, you need to know. If you make a decision to do it every single down, you have to have a great reason, a great plan, a great knowledge of it, and everything is built around it.
Sweet. I think we punched all the holes in that we can. We checked all the boxes. Let's do our level up, Joe. What is your level up?
Crap, I didn't think about it.
All right, I'll go and you think about it.
You go.
My level up this week, weirdly enough, is a video game. I don't know if you guys or you, Joe, are Zelda fans.
Yes.
Breath of the Wild was amazing.
Yes.
Okay. As a guy who started on, I think I started on the Super Nintendo. So what was that? Link to the Past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was my first Zelda game. Still super good game. Like even today, go back, very playable. I have a matter of fact, it's like burned into my mind. You're right. I don't know that I ever finished it.
I got to the Dark World.
Got away in that one.
Finished it.
Breath of the Wild came out, and I didn't buy a Switch for like, when did they come out? I don't even know when they came out. 10 years ago? 15 years ago?
16 or 17. Switch?
Is it that?
No,
that recent?
2017, something like that.
All right, that's 8 years ago. We didn't buy one until my son, I think he got it for his 4th birthday or the Christmas before he turned 4. And that was the choice because, one, it was a gaming system that was mobile. And obviously he was 3 or 4 months old and he was in an OU game, right? Like he's traveled a lot. The kid has been places. He was on a cruise at 2. He's been to Jamaica. He's been around. So we had to have a thing that was mobile because we're a very mobile family. But I can't say that it wasn't because I wanted to play a little bit of Zelda. Breath of the Wild was amazing. It has lots of aspects. But this new Tears of the Kingdom, which is not new to most of you if you're gamers, because you probably went out and got it immediately. I did not. I made him wait until, 1, he had to grow up a little bit. 2, he had to be a little bit better. And then 3, he forgot to remind us to get it for him for Christmas, so we waited 8 more months or some crap. Anyway, we got it recently. Tears of the Kingdom is the best IQ builder video game I've ever seen. It is just puzzles and problem solving and critical thinking, and even like the powers you get, like now you can go underground and come up underneath things. There's a problem, you can go through it, over it, around it, under it. You know what I mean? Like it's teaching him to think complex in this very 4D world. And I just think that is so cool. I, of course, love it because I'm a Zelda fan and love puzzles. So it's been a lot of fun for me. But watching him go through this game and like, he's reminding me sometimes, hey, Dad, you have that. It's the ascend power. Like, hey, what? I'm trying to figure out, like, I can't climb this thing or like, I can't get over. And he's like, what if you just go under it and come up under it? And I'm like,
yeah, there's a lot of that in the open world where you can use the ascend. The ascend power is great. One of the things, and I remember I told a friend of mine, I may have even said it on the podcast at one point, but I told a friend of mine, he was asking about it one time when it first came out, and I got it, and I was like, it's amazing. And I said, I love Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild had great puzzles, but they were mostly contained in the shrines, right?
Correct.
And you had to figure out how to use all these. There were other places, but you had to figure out how to use, really in the shrines, and then like maybe some boss battles and stuff. You had to use, some of the different powers or whatever they're called. And Tears of the Kingdom took all of that. There's still the shrines, but it took all of it out, and you find you're solving problems all over, like just like in the depths. You're like, you can put on this suit so you can walk over these, the gloom areas, or you can build this, or you can get a balloon, or you can drive a car over it.
Does the mining suit let you walk through the gloom?
I think it just limits your.
I know it lights things up, but
yeah, no, the mining suit lights things up. There's a gloom. I forget how.
I gotta find that. See, I'm still so fresh. Like I just got the Master Sword today.
I've got over 100 and something,
and I've not done any of the. What are the 4 phenomenons or what? I've not done any of them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm just opening the map around because that's my rule is like
helping that guy put his signs up.
Do what?
You helping that guy put his signs up? I did that forever.
So that's one of the cool ones. My son was like, "Oh, what if we do this?"
Yeah,
and then
those are fun.
That sign has this shape on it.
And there's a lot of them, so you can go do 4 or 5 of them, and then like you get kind of like over it, and then like come back and do some more of them later, which is cool. I mean, like yeah, it is. But so I told my friend, this is when it first came out, and I said I love Breath of the Wild. It's one of my favorite games. I said this makes Breath of the Wild look like a tech demo. Like that's how much more fleshed out Tears of the Kingdom was. I have not played the new Zelda, the one where you're actually Zelda.
Oh yeah, we've not played that yet.
I haven't played that yet.
I don't know that I will.
I will because I played them all. I'm actually like towards the end of Wind Waker right now because I never played that, and I've got a Steam Deck, and it's been awesome to catch up on these games. GameCube games and stuff like that just play so great on the Steam Deck. Not that I don't own it, of course, because that would be illegal. But Steam Deck's just a nice place to play it. But I eventually got to go back and play Link to the Past, and I've got to play. I haven't finished Twilight Princess or Majora's Mask. So like they're all great. I've gotten into them, but they are lengthy, and you just get caught up in stuff. And
for sure, it's now and then. You don't get off work at 3 and go home and play games until the sun goes down.
Well, it's like a Link to the Past, Link's Awakening. I played that when I got a Game Boy Advance at one point, and I got it on Game Boy Advance like a few years ago, and I played the old the original version, not the Game Boy Color version, and I loved it. And so when the Switch version came out, I got it, and I just haven't played it because it's like it's just I've got it sitting there. I've got, God forbid, I want to get into Xenoblade, and
I'm a Final Fantasy guy too, hours. So you've got it's every game I love is like you said, it's 100 hours.
I love those games, and I
ain't got time.
It's so hard. So yeah,
especially being a first-person shooter fan, where Call of Duty has eaten thousands of hours of my life.
Yeah, I've never gotten in. I've got it downloaded. I haven't touched it. So
yeah, that's my level up is a super IQ testing, critical thinking, and that's what our world is lacking right now. I feel like we just had a whole podcast about how do you just cover one guy, and there's people that are going, "Oh man, I never thought about that." Right. So anyway, what is your level up, Sir Joe?
Man, I'm trying to think. There's nothing that like jumps out as like a book I can share. I'm still on. This has been a very busy week as we've moved over to the new platform and everything.
Well, tell us about that online website building.
I'll tell you what I've leveled up is I've learned not to get in the online website building, and I've handed a lot of that off to my team, who's done a great job with it. And I have a very small team based in the Philippines, but it's a luxury to have. And it's been we're really close to fully moved and everything. We're just kind of there's a little whack-a-mole kind of thing going on right now, little things popping up. But yeah, I mean, just to have it done, and to be able to hand I think one of the things I'm happiest about is being able to hand off so many of the things to other people and have them help accomplish these things, and not be having to work until the wee hours of the morning to accomplish something like this. It's allowing me to focus on some of the things that get ignored or pushed aside when you're spending all of your time working on the technology of the business, and being able to focus on those things that are really the things that matter. Honestly, we're weird. We're a lot of people. There's a thing with, so I guess we'll go with that's my level up. There's a thing with, for those of you that want to start a business or want to do something, especially I know a lot of people want to start a business with football or with something like that and do something, they think I have a dream job. I'll tell you that a business is a business. Like, it is fun. I mean, I love what I do, and it's based in football. But the fact of the matter is, at some point, like, what I do is no different than somebody running a dental practice, right?
Right.
They just work on teeth for a small portion of the day when I work on football. But the rest of the time, we're doing business stuff. If you're trying to build a practice, if you just don't work on teeth and work on as many teeth as you can, it's different. But if you want to start a business, people get hung up in the logo design or the, what the website looks like. I'm going to pay $10,000 for somebody to design the website. I'm going to pay $300 for somebody to design a logo. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they plan and they do all this stuff. None of that matters. Like, I can just tell you from doing this for a long time, I've bought $300 logos. I've spent $5,000 for a landing page. I've done all of those things, and they don't mean crap. they mean nothing. They are a waste of your time and your money. Put something together, get it out there. Deal with the fact that you're going to get some people who are upset that it's not working right. Most people aren't. Most people are intelligent humans and go, hey, man, I know you just built this site. I just want to let you know I couldn't get into this. And you go, cool, thank you. And you go and you fix the problem. And they know that, like, somebody's got to fix the problem, and you've also got a life and everything. So I'm like, hey, I'll be at practice, but, I get home, we'll look at it. And they're cool with that. If you want to start a business, put some crap together and get it out there. Don't, it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters till you get something out there, get somebody to buy something, and then start moving forward from there. That's my level up, I guess. I don't know.
Love it. Sweet, man. Let's get out of here. JoeDanielFootball.com. You already said it. Go there. /system. No S. System.
I think both can go there.
The first system. Download the PDF. Do good things. Go to patreon.com /Chamberlain Football Consulting. Pay me to be an assistant coach on your team as you get into the playoffs. This comes out before week 10, so I know you guys are listening going to the playoffs. I know you need another assistant coach. Look, I'm about to do a full offensive self-scout for one coach that I work with. Another one I've helped since day one to complete and build out his offense, so he's doing some super fun stuff at a really low level, which is a lot of fun. It's so much fun to watch a youth coach take what we do at the varsity and be like, oh yeah, I can do that. It's just a word, right? It's a word and a kid does a thing. Like, how hard is that? Patreon.com /Chamberlain Football Consulting. Let's talk.
Cool.
Sales are opening and closing. We've covered all that. Social media, I'm at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I do have a website. I've not paid anybody to fix it, so it's pretty much trash. But you can find both podcasts there. So go there and do that thing. Joe is everywhere at Joe Daniel Football, and then at Football Info on Twitter. The podcast is at the FBCP on Twitter /X. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, especially Apple or Spotify. Leave us a review. We want 5 stars. Leave us 5 stars.
Just leave 5 stars.
Going to do the Denzel Washington Equalizer 2. I don't know. Maybe it was 2. Anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.